Ravi and Tom. Also, this will be recorded to answer the questions. So I'll pass that over now and we'll start the recording.
Cool, thanks Oscar, and welcome everyone to this now being the third football tug here from London and various other spots. Great to have everyone on board. My name is Eva Murray. I work for XSL as a technology evangelist, and with me are James from Best Story and Oscar from Tableau, and then of course our two speakers. And I know that James is going to basically moderate the session later on once Ravi and Tom are talking, and Oscar is now going to introduce our speakers, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. And as you go, if you have questions, pop them in the Q&A box. If you want to kind of have a bit of banter, put that into the chat. And we're working on a feedback form as well for you to fill out afterwards that we're going to send in the follow-up email. So Oscar, take it away.
Thank you very much, Eva, and welcome everyone to what is the third Tableau football user group. Just before we start, had a message from Will at Ipswich, and he's mentioned that he's not been able to get the link. So if everyone does have links or people who they're connected with who want to join and you're in, please share them across to them, and I'll be doing the same also. To kick off, again, we talked around last time about all things sport and how COVID's really had an effect on the game, and obviously we're seeing return to football in Germany, and we're seeing different situations all around the world really, and the one thing that's really led to is this huge demand for more around football analytics and sports analytics, and it's why we've been really keen to keep giving the community a ton of different content to keep them engaged. I've had a couple of LinkedIn messages as well, people showing me actually what they've done off the back of the user group. I shared one of them on my LinkedIn page, so feel free to connect and again share the ideas with myself, Eva, James, and also I know Ravi and Tom are also open to having conversations. Sorry to put you on the spot there. So yeah, to introduce now, super excited to have Ravi on. So Ravi is actually one of our Tableau Zen Masters. Eva is also one, and Ravi's going to be presenting about sports analytics and what he'll effectively, I don't want to take it too much, he'll keep it around sports analytics and football analytics, and then also back to the popular demand that Tom had from his first session. Tom is then going to be presenting in a bit more detail around some work, but just to give context as well, Tom has also recorded his session, as that one wasn't recorded last time, so I was getting about a mail every other day of people asking to see Tom's presentation. We didn't have it. So on that, I'll pass over to Ravi, and everyone enjoy the session.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Oscar. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I think we've got a few people from around the world online today. Just to double check, everyone can see my screen. Just a thumbs up from Oscar if you can see that. Happy days. So I'm going to talk today about building effective insights using Tableau and sort of build on the stuff that that James spoke about in the previous session about the state of play and analytics, and then build on that with the actual use cases in the day-to-day that I know that many clubs are facing. So if you think about analytics in sports as a field, football itself is quite immature. The pioneers in many ways of this are the flag-waving Americans who have used data analytics in a massive way for years and years, which also means that it's almost like you can use them as a lens to look into the future, which also means that they have many people who are naysayers. For example, people in the NBA that have hated analytics for years. So the Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs, and a few others are sort of known for their use of analytics and advanced statistics. Most organizations in the NBA are now using data and numbers to supplement and augment their analytics. However, there are folks who are naysayers. So this is Charles Barkley. Some of you might have seen him in the recent Last Dance documentary in, I think, during the USA episodes. Played a bunch for the Phoenix Suns, as well as had a great career, and is now a pundit, and often comes out with absolute controversial statements, including this one, that analytics don't work at all. It's right. He's not wrong with that last part, that it's people that are smart who are trying to get into the game because they had no talent, because I am 100% that person. The extent of my football career was being manager player at Plymouth University. When we started a team, I did hack MCFC at Man City, but realistically, The thing I have with Charles is my talent wasn't stolen by a bunch of aliens in Space Jam. So I'm happy to hold that over him. Now, over the years, since finding the sports analytics world and the football analytics world, I've blogged a lot about that sort of thing. So written a lot about trying to find ways that data can help either solve problems or sort of supplement the sort of biases we have when we watch the game of football that we love. And alongside that, I used a beautiful Excel spreadsheet. This is for team conditional formatting out there in the top left, to purvey these statistics and data and things like that. Myself, I'm obviously an Ipswich fan, so a lot of my things were on the slant and the lens as an Ipswich fan. But over the years, I've been very much invested in Tableau as a product that can help with getting that faster speed to insight. So while I've also done this, Charles Barkley doesn't get all the hate. Sometimes people on Twitter are mean. This is a few tweets that I was sent when I was tweeting a lot about Ipswich from other Ipswich fans. I quite like Ben Ramsey just chipping in to pile on there at the end as well. But let's talk about the state of play. The state of play in analytics right now is quite varied, and I think there's a bit of a spectrum of exactly where you are and sort of the team you're thinking about when you talk about data and analytics in football. And you've got one end who are super into the data statistics models. You know, they're the people who are looking at the angle of the pass, and they're looking at the very much academic research side of things to try and find those edges to get ahead. And then there are people on the other side who are like, you know what, this data stuff, it's not going to tell me, because you can do all the work you want, but your top 5 players are still going to be Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, and Mbappe. So it doesn't really tell me anything I don't already know. So what's the point? And we pragmatic folk, you know, you're all taking time out of your mornings, evenings, and afternoons to listen to an Ipswich fan talk about sports analytics. So I feel like you're all pragmatic in a way that you're thinking about, well, there is something there, and I wonder what that is. So I'm going to talk a bit about Will Spearman. Will Spearman is lead data scientist at Liverpool. He's an all-round legend and a super nice guy. He is a Harvard physicist and just insanely clever. Now, if Will ever gets around to watching this, I will apologise, because I am about to just go in on at the end of the spectrum that Will and the work he does sits at, which is the far data statistics end. If you haven't already, there are some great talks on the Opta Pro forums. They're now part of Stats Perform. And this is, I've got a couple of slides from the presentations that Will has given. Will's given a couple over the years. Now, if you put this slide or this slide in front of a coach or someone who's trying to use this in stuff that we're talking about, data analytics, to explain, you know, this is really good because what I'm talking about is the probability of a pass and all these things. They can look at you and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think the year that Will presented, there was a guy from the baseball team in the US who was just like, well, he tried talking to a coach about a random forest model, and they just laughed about it. And then they recall it as, hey, remember when you were talking to me about a random forest and telling me it was somewhat important? Like, you can't really, there is that translation piece that has to happen when you're talking about sports analytics. And this is effectively me in that session, because I'm sitting there like trying to absorb the absolute insane level of galaxy brain that Will Spearman is trying to show. But realistically, this is where I was at. Like, I'm not as hot on maths and statistics as I could be, so I wasn't able to follow along as much. So I have no idea how someone who's working with players and coaches day in, day out might have felt in that sense. Now, there are different ways of presenting this information. These are 2 examples I've picked up from the football analytics community. On the right-hand side, you've got something from Analytics FC. Ben Torvany built this a couple of years ago. It's basically showing the distribution of different metrics and then where Memphis Depay measures up against every other player. On the left, I really like this. This is off the Seattle Sounders Analytics Conference that was on over the last couple of weeks. Dave Corte basically did a lot of manual analysis by watching corners and coding. And I think every performance analyst on the call has done some level of manual work to get the data and the information they're looking for. So what Dave did is he watched every single corner that Man City did, and every corner taker, and then showed where the ball ended up, and then visualized that. So when I talk about sports analytics and data visualization, I think about what is the best way and simplest way to purvey information. And that's really what I'm going to dig in on later today. Now, I mentioned NBA and analytics, and I think a lot of the stuff we see on Twitter from organizations who are building these things out. For example, on the left, you have this poster, which are, the NBA All-Stars is a radar. Many of you might recognize these as the infamous Knudsen radars. If you look at the post that Ted Knudsen wrote about building the radars out, he actually cites this as his inspiration for building them out. And on the right here, you've got Kurt Goldsberry's shot maps, which have been used and reused by many people in the sports analytics space. So I think the final thing I wanted to mention about the state of play was look at other sports, especially things like NBA and ice hockey, which are invasion sports similar to football, to get an idea of exactly what is possible and what could become the norm in football in the next 5 to 10 years. Because as I said, I feel like it is still immature and there is still some ways to go. But ultimately, this is the only stat that matters, the win, right? So what we're trying to do, everything you do within these has to be worked towards winning something, winning matches, and succeeding, right? So that's really what it's all about. So let's talk about the day-to-day work that a performance analyst does or club practitioners do, and then bring in Tableau into that context. So we'll talk about 3 sections where you can do some actionable insights. I'm going to talk a bit about training performance and how Tableau can help with visualizing basic training performance that people might already be doing in other tools. I'm going to be talking about team and match analysis in a roundabout way, and finally finish on a bit of player analysis, which will actually feature over the last 10 years. Ipswich haven't been too great, but this player has been one of the best. So please feel free to comment on who that might be in the chat, and let's see who gets it right. So let's talk about training loads. Training loads is quite important. Like as football grows and as we go towards an industry where everything we do and everything that footballers do and everything that happens in the club is captured in some level of data form. Training loads is one of them. Like you see the players in the straps perform straps, and you've got GPS data and all these different things as well as health information. So how do we actually visualize that today? So this is if I use search key metrics like RTE on Google, this is the sort of thing you see. You see the spreadsheet or the Excel macro driven thing that people have built to visualize and show this information back to their coaches. Now, there's got to be a better way, right? So let's think about what they want. So what a coach or a practitioner wants from this sort of information is something that's simple to understand, fast speed to insight, and can be actionable. So let's hop into Tableau. Let's do some hands-on work. So I'm just slid across. Also give me a thumbs up if you can see Tableau now. Happy days. So I'm going to go across to this sheet, and what I'm going to do is first of all go to this dummy data set I've created using a website called mockaroo.com. I highly recommend it. And my company, Bantalytics FC, has done some training, and we want to actually visualize what they've done in a way. So I've got these calculated fields here. So in Tableau, you've got your tables on the left. I'm bringing the full name of the player. So we've got all our players now. And what I want to do is actually visualize the key metrics. So I'm going to hold down Command, click accelerations. We'll look at distance run, the RPE, and the RPE percentage. And I want to visualize all these in the best way possible. So within a few clicks, I've now got Tableau to show me a bar chart. Fantastic, this is great. I need to hover over each one of these to get the actual idea of what they're showing me. But what I can actually do is then turn on mark labels. I'm going to do that here by clicking this button. And happily, luckily, I've now got all of these different metrics. Maybe I want to add a splash of color to each one. I'm just going to pick a few random ones as we go through. And what I'm trying to show here is there are different ways of using Tableau to just show something simple. What a coach is looking for is how do my players do, like immediately, and who is the highest, lowest, etc., and what information can I show here. So I can now use these sort buttons at the bottom to show the top players for each metric. And what I can also do is color this. So RTE, I can show that these players actually broke the RTE max. So what I want to do is use this calculate field I've got to just color that slightly differently, so I can see those quite quickly. Now, what a coach is looking to do here is they want to take this information and build on it. They want to use this and understand it at a glance and not have to think about building this out. This is what we as practitioners and people that building these charts do in order for them to be consumed by the end user. So in true art attack file style, this is one I prepared earlier. It's exactly the same as what's we had in what I've built over here. However, I've now got a few filters, so I can now filter onto the first team and then do the same sort. I can change and focus on my forwards and do the same sort. And given that Tableau is an application that can be used on iPads, imagine the sort of vision I always have is, imagine a coach being able to use this on the training field to get live information about exactly how their players are doing, either in between breaks or things like this, through data refreshes. So this is from this, I can then take actions and sort of show players what they're doing, and it's easy to understand. It's very, I always have a rule of thumb that if it takes you about 30 seconds to a minute to explain a chart before they can actually understand what's going on, you've lost the audience. And I think that's a relatively good rule of thumb to follow, especially in something where people are looking for those quick, fast insights as football and any sports industry in that manner. Don't underestimate the value of cleaning things up like tooltips and where you hover. So for example, in this section, I've got the forwards, Aleki Sexton. I may want to clean this up so it's actually easier to follow who this is. So maybe I can go to the tooltip. Let me actually go to the distance run as a good example. Go to the tooltip and I can quickly edit these, add his position as a additional field, and the squad that he's in and the metric itself. Now what I can do here is then make this a slightly bigger thing, make it a darker color, and maybe grey these ones out a bit more as well. Now, as you start using Tableau, it's kind of like this gratuitous cycle where as you start using something more and more, you're able to think about the tools you have in front of you and then find ways of making the best use of them. So, for some people, these hovers might not be too useful. For others, you might be able to actually add in a couple of comments here, such as this is a comment, to give people context about exactly what you're doing. Cool. So the final thing I want to talk about is this peak age chart. So for example, if you want to, and on here I want to talk about the annotation layer and just adding in small bits of information. So if I just take away this RP10 and I take away these bands, you can see that I'm able to see the distribution of my age across my team and the RP that each player hit in my first team. But if once I add in these two levels of detail, which is firstly show me the players that hit over their 100% mark and players that in theory are in peak age between 24 and 29, I'm able to quickly show my team, or the recruitment side or whatever, like, look, we've got some really good youngsters coming through. We also have some quite old players, and if we're looking at peak age players that can perform at the highest of their ability or can continue to develop, we've not got too many. So let's think about how our squad is built. And I think these are really simple charts, and everything that you're doing to build these things out, always consider the different messages you're purveying. So let's hop back to Tableau. So my presentation rather. The second section I wanted to talk about was team and match analysis. And in terms of this, the example reports you see, this is from Scout, is just simple snapshots, right? So this is basically snapshots you can take from what's happening, and typically what happens within a club, from what I understand, is people take these snapshots, put them in a PowerPoint, and then supplement it with the information they have. So how could Tableau help with this? I think the automatic refresh is probably the most important thing. So in this case, I'm going to use the data set from Opta, which is analyzing fullbacks. Charlie from Everton on the call might recognize the pitch map I use, because it is one that I think he designed originally. So if I bring in my X and Ys, I'm currently focusing on one single player. So if I show my filter, you can see I'm looking at Branislav Ivanovic and Pablo Zabaleta. I want to disaggregate both of these so I can see my pitch map that I prepared earlier. And now I'm able to quickly see Ivanovic and Zabaleta and the different areas they pervade on this the right side of the pitch in the matches I have in view. And maybe I want to bring in the different types of pass. I can search here for the type, bring that into the view, onto the tooltip, and then I can hover over and see the different values. So again, using these different things to show the different outcomes and events. But what I want to do with this is actually just compare Ivanovic and Zabaleta. So what I'm going to do is bring my players through. So my player name, bring that through onto here, split them two up, maybe add a bit of color to show them more distinctly, change them to circles perhaps. So from automatic, I want to change the circle mark type. And then what I want to do for the next section is actually build the different types of events that they were part of. So I want to bring in the type name as a table or a heat map, and the players, again, player name, and then the number of each metric that they hit. So I can use this, the count of each metric here. This is all well and good. I can now sort by the most popular, which is obviously a pass. And again, in Artifact style, here's one I prepared earlier. And this is the thing I want to mention here is the different ways of using Tableau's dashboarding fields, right? So I've built a dashboard of all of these different, these two different charts. I've got a pitch up here and my heat map at the bottom. I can now click on a type. So for example, I want to focus on every interception. When I click on that, I'm able to then click, there we go, highlight each interception in detail. Perhaps I'm interested in the aerial duels each player won. I can click on that and see exactly where the aerials were won. So Ivanovic, for example, is perhaps off a corner, able to pick this up. Maybe I want to look at the interceptions and where balls are regained, and both are playing on relatively high lines. So these are different. The thing I'm trying to mention here is the fact that you're able to use Tableau to supplement and delve into the different match reports. So if this is connected to a live report that's pulling through, what you're then able to do is actually get this live and just quickly swap between different tasks. Now, if you're doing any sort of match analysis, I'm going to hop into, if anyone's seen me present, they'll be aware of the data that I collected for the World Cup in 2018. And what you can do is use things like big numbers as part of these dashboard elements, right? So I'm going to search for, say, for example, the number of shots and the shots on target. So I want to bring this in as text, and then shots on target also as text. And then I want to bring the team name to split them up over here. So now I'm looking at Argentina versus Iceland from the World Cup. Maybe I want to bring these up here. And what I can do is make these big numbers, remove the zoom bar, and then change this to show that it's shots and shots on target. So I can make the shots as bold and quite big. So I can change these to be, I don't know, let's say 20, make them bold. And then underneath here, make this slightly smaller and do shots on target as a visual cue. And then what I'm able to do here is I'm able to use these in a dashboard as big numbers to just quickly purvey that information. Another common use case for these is a race chart. I think I did that wrong there. I think I need to swap the shots and shots on target around, but we'll come back to that later. Another one is a race chart, so we use this shot timeline. I can bring in the time along the columns axis, and then the number of records, in this case, which is the shot counter, as a race chart. Now you can see here I've got Argentina and Iceland. I can bring them in as two different colors. Tableau is still telling me I've got a stacked bar chart, but what I want to do is do a running total of this. So right click, quick table calc, running total, and then do a line chart off the back of this. And then we make these steps so it follows the sort of idea I had before. Okay, so what the benefit of building out a dashboard like this is you build it once, and then once the data is updated, you're then able to just simply change the match to get the information you're looking for. You can see here all of the charts on this dashboard are completely simple. There's no complex charts here at all. It's just using things like big numbers or a line chart or a bar chart in order to purvey the information so a coach and anyone can understand it without having to think about exactly what's going on here, right? So using the annotations, using simple chart types, and using descriptions to explain what each metric is showing really helps to add that sort of design thinking to the information that you're all purveying. So let me hop across back here. So again, what do coaching practitioners want from match and player analysis? It helps to know what data you have and helps to know what's relevant. So this is where understanding the coach and having that communication, being that translator between both the players and the coach, the coaches and the data, really does make sure the information is purveyed in the right way. And finally, keeping it simple means that there's no explanations that need to go through to say this chart is showing this one's over here, and then the second you're explaining something more and more, you've lost the practitioner, or you can be losing the practitioner. Finally, I'm going to talk about player analysis. Again, this is where we can start using the hybrid and bring two people together. So the people who are using the data and the scouts, data and analytics, and the scouts from their personal knowledge. So again, I'm going to hop back into Tableau. And what we're going to talk about is Daryl Murphy. So kudos to anyone that got that correct. So Daryl Murphy had a bit of a weird season in 14-15, almost fired Ipswich Town to the promised land. He was 31 years old, scored 27 goals out of nowhere. His career didn't really show that he was a big goal scorer. And if you think about who Daryl Murphy is or was as a player back then, these are the characteristics that he followed quite nicely. He ran the channels well, held the ball up, was taking a lot of shots with high conversion, and was good in the air. So if you're considering replacing someone like Daryl Murphy, what do you do? Well, the data can help here because you can start profiling someone who matches what Daryl Murphy is able to show, right? So I'm going to start building a scatter plots using this data sort called Daryl Who. So we talked about the volume of shots he took. So maybe I want to look at the shot total as one metric. And then I'm going to use, perhaps I want to look at the aerials one as my second metric. So aerial 1 per 90 over here. Tableau, obviously, it doesn't know who I'm talking about because I have not brought any players. So I'm going to bring in this player name group field. And then I'm going to do a minutes filter to say I only want to look at players who have played over 900 minutes in a season. Oops, let me edit that really quickly. And then we'll do all values. And then we'll play 900 minutes in a season as a rough rule of thumb. Who's this up here? Oh, let's play a group other. Exclude that. I picked up the wrong one. Let me bring that in there. There we go. And exclude that. So now we have many players, right? So if we look at who these outliers are, you've got Rudy Gestede with a high level of headers one. Again, the really interesting and important thing here is the context you bring as a person that works in football and watches football is important. For example, I can tell you that Blackburn, when they did Gestede up front, were a long ball team, and Gestede was very much a tall guy who's good in the air. Alex Ravel, Emil Heskey, of course, and Daryl Murphy over here as a massive outlier. So with a few clicks and using a scatter plot, I'm able to start building out a piece of analysis that's looking at how can we replace someone who has given us such great output in Daryl Murphy. So for part one, we've brought in this, again, his one I prepared earlier. You've got aerial 1 per 90 and shots per 90, and I've got on size the danger zone conversion. So by this, I mean conversions, the conversion rate from within the 6-yard box as a proxy of how good they are at finishing. So I've now got this Murphy replacement zone of players I think might be quite good at doing exactly what Daryl Murphy does. And if we dig into this a bit more, you'll spot some players that you might recognise. So for example, Glenn Murray, who was age 31 at the time, Cameron Jerome, not quite sure where he's ended up. Troy Deeney, of course, has a great career. Jan Kermigan. Glenn Murray is an interesting one here because, of course, he's continued his career well into his late 30s. But these were fairly out of Ipswich's range of paper looking forward. So what you end up doing is focus on players that are similar, but perhaps might be a bit more amicable. And this is using what's called the two techniques. Firstly is using colour to bring players into the foreground who are have been identified using this group function. So what you can do is select a bunch of people over here, for example, and click this paperclip to group them together. And then ta-da, we get a nice colour pop up. But we're also using annotations, and what annotations do is you can add these things in and then start using these as part of a report or a story that explains what the player is doing for your team in general. So it's about using Tableau and the speed of exploring the data and finding these insights, and then taking it to the next step to fit into the world that you live in and the problems that this could solve for you. What was interesting is James Vaughan was one, and the second one was Brett Pittman. And someone might have put Brett Pittman in the chat, as I'm a big fan. And we actually signed Brett Pittman on a free, I think as part of the Tyrone Mings deal. So Mings went one way, and we got Ryan Fraser on loan and Brett Pittman on a free. So that was all good. So what I've done there is I've walked through the sort of hybrid approach you can use when showing some player analysis and how you can bring the practitioners together to get better insight as a result. So bringing together what the scouts and coaches see, finding out how we can measure this with the data. So I think understanding the fundamental data that you have in front of you is very important. And then finally, what is the benefit the data is bringing versus anything else? So what is the actual value add, and what does this add that we can't get from general scouting or the day-to-day normal processes that you have within the club? So we're now into extra time. We've got 5 added minutes. So I'm just going to quickly start wrapping up what we've gone through today. So I've talked about 3 different sections and sort of brought them to life by using Tableau in some way, shape or form to analyze training performance. We saw the dashboard which showed the loads and the different ways of showing data in a really simple way. The team and match analysis, looking at event data using Opta, as well as then bringing through simple bar charts to do match analysis that can be repeatable as a process. And finally, some player analysis on something a bit more bespoke, like replacing a player that's outgoing, by identifying the right metrics, by using the insight and the experience of the coaches and the practitioners around the club to start aiding and bringing the things together as part of a hybrid process. So the things I want to leave you with in terms of best practice, firstly are don't forget to use simple concepts to find rich insights. As I mentioned, there are complex ways of showing this information, as I showed at the start of this presentation. But as long as you're getting some level of insight and some level of value out of what you're building, it's always quite important. Of course, your data will dictate what you can do. Secondly, always value white space, labels, and annotations. So I talked a bit about using the design guidelines. I often use Pinterest and other sort of tags, different vizzes I've seen on the internet to sort of say, I like this style guide, this poster, or this viz, or this, like even just layouts and color schemes to start aiding the design process of something we do, because it's quite easy to get bored of the Tableau out-of-box functionalities. Labels and annotations help to bring data to life and also add the human element to it. So everyone on this call is some level of fantastic analysts with some great insights they can share with across different clubs and organizations. Labels and annotations bring them to life as you're able to add in your insight and your steer based on your experience or the experience of others. And finally, never forget the end user. So the question that should always be in the back of your mind, or in fact, the front of your mind, is how will this help change what we do? How is this impacting? Are we doing this for the sake of it? Are we doing a massive exercise to find out a system to rank players, only to find that Messi and Ronaldo are the 2 best players in the world? What is the actual impact of the analysis you're doing? And how can I, as a practitioner of Tableau and data, use this to help me move forward? With that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm of course happy to take any questions, but thank you all for listening to this presentation.
Thanks very much, Ravi. Really interesting. We have got a few questions that we'll walk through, and if anyone else does have any questions, then feel free to add them to our Q&A box, and I'll try and work through some of those before we move on to Tom's talk. So first one, this might be it's a difficult question, given that we've got quite a few data analysts on the call. This question is there a shortage of data analysts in the industry? And if not, is there a shortage of good data analysts in the industry? So without being overly controversial,
yeah, for sure.
What's your opinion on that?
I think the state of play is changing, right? So if you talk to me about 5 years ago, and you talk to a lot of people in the Twitter analytics community as it was back then, it's got a lot quieter than it once was. It was almost like this moment of, like, if you watch The Big Short, of Michael Burry on the floor sort of thinking that there's going to be a crash soon, or there's going to be an explosion soon. I just don't know when. I feel like there's been a pop, not really an explosion. There's been a lot of people that have gone into clubs. I think I think what's changing and what's quite interesting is the way that clubs are considering this is very much following along the route of, how do we find people who are able to bring something different to the organization, or how do we supplement the knowledge we already have within our analysts? I wouldn't say there's a shortage. I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of data analysts. I think what there is a shortage of is the translators. I think there are many people on this call who are fantastic translators for their organizations to explain both the coaching side and the data side. I think that is something that needs a bridge that is there right to be crossed, to be able to speak the language of a coach and a scout and an end user, as well as speak the data language and do that translation process between them. So I think that's where I'd say. I think the way that clubs are approaching data and analytics will change and will continue to change in the next 5 years as well.
Excellent. A couple of other questions here. Slightly more technical, less loaded perhaps. Is the Opta XY set publicly available from your talk, and can they steal the pitch map that you were using? Is that available as well?
The pitch map, yeah. I'll double check with Charlie that it's okay to share that. I think that it's about 3 or 4 years old now, but I absolutely can share the pitch map. The Opta data, no, unfortunately not. This was off a agreement that we had for a talk we did at the Information Lab. That's where we got that from. So I can't share that, unfortunately. However, I do speak to our good friends at Stats Perform if you do want to play around with some Opta data. I will also give a shout out to 2 data sets, Metrica, who do some great stuff on tracking data that's very public right now, and StatsBomb, who have made all of their women's data available, as well as Messi over the years. They work in the Invincible season, and also they did the Champions League season recently as well. So do check out StatsBomb and Metrica, and do contact our good friends at Stats Perform as well.
Excellent. Next one, this is about data prep. How do you prep your data before putting it into Tableau? Is there a move from Alteryx to R/Python?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, right? So I obviously have a very specific slant on this, given that I work in data. But with the hat on of someone that works in football, I think the yes is the answer. There has to be some ETL process beforehand. I think Eva on the call is obviously has done some great work with Excel in helping clubs move forward with sports analytics. The ETL, extract, transform, and load process, the data prep process, is important because you have to have data in the right format and the structure, and also when you want to start adding more columns and more information. So for example, in that example I use, that's a hybrid of tracking and Opta data. What are the different ways of doing it? Of course, you can use R and Python, free open source tools. We know that clubs love free. The things I often, the buyer beware I talk about with free tools like R and Python is, yeah, they're great, they're fantastic. You can use packages, and it's very much a community-driven tool. But when that person who is the expert in R and Python leaves, and you're struggling to find someone to replace him on the key important day-to-day tasks, you really want something that's repeatable and ready to go. And this is where self-service tools like Tableau Prep Builder, once it becomes a bit more mature, and Alteryx do come into play to help with that automated process of, we don't really need an ETL person anymore because we build it once and it's there forever. So I of course am a purveyor of some level of self-service analytics tool. I don't think there's anything wrong with using R or Python, but of course do be aware of the what's the word, extensibility and longevity of something that's built in R or Python. I know clubs that have had to rewrite complete entire flows because the person that wrote it left and they didn't document it properly.
Sounds good. And then final question here, would Ravi consider making a jump to work on the inside for a club? And inside is in quotations.
It's a good question. I think it would have to be the right role. It very much depends on what the offer is, but yeah, potentially in the future.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ravi. That was really interesting. Really good talk, and hopefully people can take away some of the points that he's made there for your own clubs. So with that, I'm going to introduce Tom again. Tom spoke in our first ever user group and did such a fantastic job that there was high demand to get him back in. And so Tom, over to you. If you'd like to share your screen, I can just confirm that when people can see it, and then Tom will take us through his presentation. So I can see your presentation now. That's fine. Over to you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, morning all. Thanks for having me back as well. This is Team Sheets, Time Saving in Tableau. It's very much a follow-on really of the first piece I did, the first webinar. And it also fits in nicely, I think, with what Ravi's just spoken about. So hopefully the two together will paint a really nice picture of what Tableau can bring to clubs at all levels, really. So in the first webinar, I spoke about how we use Tableau at Swansea City, which we have a sort of a really well streamlined department there, 4 of us. So that was really in depth, looking at our process and how we use Tableau in that. Whereas this is more at a basic level. So I've sort of called this back to basics. And this is how Tableau can be used at all clubs, even those with sort of one analyst and even an analyst, without any real data experience. So we'll dive straight in. So why should we use Tableau, or why can Tableau help? Well, if we automate the mundane tasks, then we've got more time to spend finding valuable insights, which in turn can affect behaviours, influence decision-making, and therefore win matches. So again, Ravi mentioned in his speech, winning matches is really what we're all working for. So straight in, team sheets. All analysts will obviously know this. 75 minutes before kickoff, the team sheets are in. Now, probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time, hopefully, the team of analysts or the analysts and the coaches will sort of have guessed the 11 that the opposition are about to play. However, sometimes you might be one or two players off, but you might have that covered. Potentially they've got two forwards and it's either one or the other that plays. However, sometimes there might be a curveball, which can lead to questions like this. I'm sure everyone watching will have had these questions, sort of an hour before kickoff. Are they playing three at the back? They might have played an extra defender that you didn't expect. Player X, he hasn't played since January. Sometimes players have been frozen out, and then all of a sudden, if a team's struggling, they've been thrown back in. And then maybe, who is player Y? Has he come from the academy? Is this his first game? Now, at this point, the clock is ticking. The coach and the players need to know who these players are if you haven't covered them. Like I say, most of the time you have, but sometimes you can end up in this situation where a player slipped through the net and you've got to react quickly to basically give the coaches and the players an overview of what this player is like. So what are your options? Well, normally you'll probably dive straight into Y-Scout or Instat, quickly get some clips, but can performance data and Tableau help? So this here is a solution in real time. So if you imagine you're at the stadium, you open up Tableau, and this is your dashboard that you open up. I'll just play this video through and we'll talk through it. So this is a player passing profile now. So in this instance, we're saying that we're playing against Luton Town. So we click on Luton, you can see all the players there at the top. And on the right-hand side, you can see a bar chart, which is ranking the players on a number of metrics. Now, as I mentioned, this is a passing profile. You could have this for defensive actions. You can have this for shots and attacking actions as well. Now, let's say the player in question is Jacob Butterfield. Now, I know this data is made up, by the way, so I don't want anyone jumping on me saying, oh, Butterfield has played a handful of games for Luton. I'm well aware of that. But for this instance, it's the player that I've selected. What we can now see when we select Butterfield is at the top, we get a brief overview of the sort of player he is. So his midfielder is English. We've got his age there, how many games he's started and how many minutes he's played. Again, those metrics at the minute aren't right, but this is just an example for you. Other things we could have on there as well would include maybe a shirt number, which would help the coaches for marking at corners and so on. But again, it's really simple and up to you what sort of metrics you put there in at the top. Now, on the bottom left of this dashboard, you can see how Butterfield passes the ball. So where does he pass from and where does he pass to? Now, at the minute, we're looking at these sort of spots or dots on the pitch map. They obviously refer to where the pass started and where the pass ended. Now, there's three colours on there at the minute. Orange refers to short passes, blue refers to sort of medium length passes, and pink refers to long passes. Now, you've also got a filter on there where you can set what you believe is a short or long pass. So at the minute, it's set to 12 and 45. But I believe, there we go, you can change that to whatever settings you like. So anything under 10 is a short pass. Then you can see a few of the circles changed, and anything over 35, I think I put in here, becomes a long pass. And you can see there, some of those passes changed. So straight away from this, without needing to look at the video, we can say, right, well, Butterfield likes to receive the ball, probably just inside his own half, which is true if you've seen him play. And if we then change this chart from a spot to a density, it actually gives us a better understanding of how he passes the ball. So he'll often look to go sideways and maybe find his centre backs. But when he does play forward, he'll look to play into the box. So he's looking to play in behind. So straight away, we've then got an understanding of how he's going to play. On the right-hand side now, we can start to look at these bar charts and we can see where Butterfield ranks compared to his other players. So he's right in the middle there for total passes. We could potentially adjust that for a per 90. Pass success, so he keeps the ball well, retains possession well, doesn't really play long. And in terms of forward passes, he's pretty average, really, compared to the rest of the players in the team. So straight away there, in a couple of minutes, we've got an understanding of how Jacob Butterfield plays. Again, we can move to the next dashboard, which will maybe tell us how he defends. Or if he's a more attacking player, we can obviously go to the attacking dashboard and look how he goes forward as well. So straight away now, within maybe 3 or 4 minutes, we've got an understanding of that. We can now go into Wisecout or Instat, and instead of having to look through games and games of clips and panicking, trying to work out what clips we need, we can say, right, this is where he receives the ball and this is where he passes to. So maybe we'd say, right, let's go and get 3 or 4 clips of him playing in behind. Okay, so straight away there, the data has been able to help us in a crucial time. Okay, so now we'll get on to the sort of main gist of this webinar and the role of an analyst. So across the top 4 tiers of English football, I've spoken to an analyst in every one of these leagues in the last couple of weeks, and I've essentially asked them, what do you do on a weekly basis? And this is what they've come back with. They all gave me much more detail than this, by the way. I've just condensed it down and tried to turn it into a couple of key points, which we can then go through. So you can see from the Premier League to League 2, really, most teams are looking for the same thing when it comes to analysing the opposition. So they're looking at formations, what formations their opponents are going to play. Set pieces is obviously really important. Where do they score goals? Where do they create chances? And then also, how do they distribute the ball? So looking at pass maps, how do they build? How do they create? If we zoom in then on the key, I've condensed that down again into 5 or 6 key points. They're the key points that we're going to try and go through in this webinar and basically show how Tableau can help you with these processes at your club. So first one is formations and team selection. So the questions that you're asking here are, what shape are our opponents likely to play? Which players are likely to start? And which players are most commonly subbed on or subbed off? Now, how would you normally do this? Well, perhaps you go to Transfer Market, or you go to Who Scored or another website, and you'd copy and paste the lineup. You know, I think even if you go into Google and you type in a match, you can see the 2 teams lined up. You could copy and paste from there into your pre-match document. Potentially, you even manually create these in a Keynote slide or a PowerPoint, you know, using little nodes and drag them around into a 4-3-3 shape or whatever it may be. Is there a better way using Tableau? Well, there is, and here's a couple of examples of how you can do that. So this is a formation analysis overview. We're actually looking at Leeds here. So you can see at the top, you can filter there. We're actually looking at the Championship. What formations have they played? At the top left, you can see quantity based on the length of the bar. And then in the circle at the end, you can see the average points per game when they play that formation. Below it, you can then see the opposite of that. So what formation have they faced and the points per game they've won facing those those formations as well. Top right, you've then got most used players. This is just an example, really. I've just got the top 5 players based on minutes, but you could put any metric in there you like, really. You could put most substituted player, brought on or off, or you could even filter between that as well. And then the time of subs as well. This is actually quite an interesting one. I'll just pause this before it changes. So if we're looking at the time of subs here at Leeds, Bielsa actually tends to make quite a lot of substitutions at half time. So you can see that big dark bar there on the 46th minute. He actually makes a lot of subs at half time, so he's not afraid to change it early. After that, though, he'll then tend to wait until around the 70th minute before doing anything. If we then compare that to, say, West Brom, who are obviously up towards the top of the league with them, which you'll see now, West Brom actually tend to make their subs a lot earlier. So Bilic will react quicker in the second half. So from around the 60th minute, you see from 60 to 70, he's really starting to make a lot of subs there. So that can just give us an indication of when they're likely to do that. We can also go a step further and look exactly who those substitutes are as well. Finally, at the bottom, a really simple form guide. So again, you know, it's back to basics. It's just bar charts, dropped a colour on there, as Ravi spoke about as well. You know, obviously red's loss, orange is draw, and green's win. So you can see if a team has recently changed formation or what success they're having in each of those formations as well. And then actually going on and grabbing a team sheet as well. So where I mentioned maybe you go to a website and you copy and paste, well, you can actually build this out in Tableau as well. So I'll just play this through. Really straightforward dashboard we're looking at here. Results of the game at the top and the two squads to the right and left of the pitch where we've got the formations plotted. So this is the first game of the season, the Championship this season, Luton v Middlesbrough. We've got all the options here. Historic seasons, all the leagues across Europe. And let's say in this instance, I think I went for Millwall. Yep. Ordered by date, and we can go and get their last few formations. So Forest v Millwall, click on that. We can export that. Next one down, Bristol City, and we can export that. So really quickly, we can pull off all of these lineups. So hopefully that's giving you an idea of how you can save time when it comes to looking at team lineups and team formations. And we'll jump into the next section, which is key metrics. So now these can be relevant to your playing style, home and away as well. And then you can compare against your average, but also the league average as well. Now, a lot of what I'm going through today is actually sort of pre-match stuff, but you could sort of do the flip side of this and look at post-match as well. But I'm approaching this as if we're about to play Burton Albion in League One. So at the top, I don't know if I can move this out of the way. Yeah. There's a date filter there, so you can decide what date you want to look at. Obviously, if a new manager comes in, you might only want to look at the date period where that new manager's been in charge. Again, you've got the filters for whichever league you want to look at. Do you want to look for or against a certain team? Do you want to look home versus away, which was something mentioned by the analysts right at the start? And then you select your next opponent. So if we select Burton Albion here, we can quickly get an understanding of how they play. This is looking at sort of a build-up distribution sort of page. So if we look at passes, they're sort of mid-table really for total passes and successful passes. But where it starts to get interesting is that their successful passes into the attacking third and into the penalty area are actually really high. So they move the ball forward quickly and effectively because these are successful passes. That might then make you think, well, are they just playing a lot of long balls? Are they launching it into the box? Well, if you then look at the long balls table as well, you can see they're actually not. So they are getting into the opposition half quickly and then moving it into the box from there. So straight away, we get an understanding of how Burton Albion are going to play. Just play this through. And again, as this is very much sort of entry-level Tableau and real back-to-basic stuff, this is just a table. You know, it's not a chart. There's nothing fancy. It's a simple table. But with that highlighter on there, we can really quickly understand how teams compare to other teams in their league. See on this example, if I just switch it to against, and then you can see how they essentially defend against passes. So how many passes do they allow into certain areas? So they actually allow a lot of long balls. So long balls against, they're the highest in the league. Well, if you know Burton Albion, I think their back four is certainly not the youngest. So teams are perhaps trying to get in behind them and play long balls against them. From there, if we're sticking with Burton, we know they pass the ball forward well and get into the box. Now let's look at player level. So again, really straightforward. This is a chart, again, similar to what Ravi made. It's as if we worked in cohesion really with this. Pretty straightforward. We're looking at attacking metrics here. So passing into the attacking third, passing into the link zone, passing into the penalty area and key passes. So now we can actually look at specific players. Who are the danger men? And on here, you know, you would suggest it probably Scott Fraser and Lucas Akins as well. That actually links us in quite nicely really to the distribution map. So this is sort of the next level after that. So we've gone from a team level, we've gone from a player level, and now we can actually start to plot these events on a pitch as well. So we can quickly find which players pass to who, and then also questions that you might get from a coach. How many times did we find the 9? How many times did we successfully pass the ball into the box? All of those can be answered really quickly using Tableau. So this is a passing grid and a passing map. We've done the Championship, we've done League One. We're actually now going to the Premier League for this example. And we're looking at Liverpool. So an interesting sort of partnership or combination to look at is Trent Alexander-Arnold passing to Robertson, and that's what we're going to do here. So it's 2 sheets. One is a passing matrix on the left, and then on the right, we've got the pass map. So we select Liverpool, we select which game we want to look at. The passer is on the left, and then the receiver is along the top. So we can quickly click on that there, and we can see those actual passes. So where Alexander-Arnold has found Robertson. Go to the next game, and we can do the same again. Now that's all well and good from probably a post-match perspective, that one, where we can look at the match that we've just played and we can quickly identify passes that were made. But we might want a longitudinal view. Now this looks very messy at the minute, but we are looking at every pass here that Liverpool have played this season. But really quickly, with the filters on the right-hand side, we can start to filter this down. So we're looking at every match played by Liverpool, but we actually only want to look at Alexander-Arnold. So we'll search for him. There he is. You can see that makes a lot more sense now. And then the receiver, Robertson. So now we're looking at a full season's worth of switches from right back to left back for Liverpool. And we also have these additional filters as well, which I mentioned at the start. So we can filter it further and look at into the attacking third, into the penalty area, and so on. Another specific question that or a specific sort of point that one of the analysts I spoke to mentioned was looking at goalkeeper distribution. So here we select a goalkeeper and we look at how he distributes from goal kicks as well. We can filter this to make it cleaner to understand. We can perhaps just look at the last 3 or 4 matches. But again, this is something that the analysts said they do, and really quickly we can get the answer to that in Tableau. Now we move to chance analysis. So where did they shoot from? Where did they score from? What time did they score the goals? And then obviously recent form in front of goal as well. So this is something that all 4 analysts from all 4 divisions spoke about, which makes sense, of course. So how can data and the Tableau help us here? So here's a chance analysis dashboard. This is a video as well, so we'll play it through. We're actually looking at Charlton here, obviously in the Championship, and this is shots and chances for. You see at the top, there's the filter there to switch between for and against. Really simple metrics at the top, sort of the big numbers. Are they overperforming or underperforming compared to their expected goals? On the left-hand side, on the bar chart, we've got time of goal. So what time did they score? And obviously what time did they concede as well? If we then filter this to Brentford, you can see they're very dangerous in that sort of second period of the game, between 15 and 30 minutes. They also score a lot of goals late on as well, 13 goals there. And at the bottom, we've got just a selection of pitch maps. So on the left, we've got where they scored the goals from. In the middle, we've got sort of the YZ coordinates, so sort of where their shots end up. And then on the right, we've got every single shot coloured if they're a goal or not, and sized by the expected goal value. So obviously, shots close to the goal are going to have a higher expected goals. Not going to bore you with any more detail on that in a minute. But I think the middle chart as well, when you're looking at the YZ coordinates, could be a really useful tool, let's say, for looking at goalkeepers. Goalkeepers tend to concede down a certain side, and that's also a really nice chart to use for penalty analysis as well. And then going a step further, again, it's a really similar example to something that Ravi showed. I think he compared 2 players' passing tendencies. I think it was Zabaleta and Ivanovic. This is looking at comparing 2 players' shot maps. So this is Mbeumo and Benrahma at Brentford. I probably should have put these the other way around, really, because one plays on the left and one plays on the right, and they're the opposite way around here. But we can see that Mbeumo will come in off the right and tend to shoot in that area just outside the box on the right-hand side, and Benrahma will play off the left. And when you watch him play on the clips, it seems like he'll come inside and shoot a lot, which he does, if you see sort of in this area here. But he actually ends up across the other side of the box a lot as well. So I think to the naked eye and to the video, you might not think about these shots a lot, but you do need to be aware of that. Now, this is a really simple graphic that we can share with the goalkeeper and defender. So that might just be show them on an iPad or WhatsApp it to them, and they've got this straight away. And then finally, we move to set pieces. So who takes their set pieces, who wins the most first contacts, and where do they deliver to as well. So I've got a confession to make really here, and I've been a little bit of a cop-out. There's so much stuff you can do with set pieces. It probably warrants another, a whole webinar in itself, really. And, you know, maybe that'll be the hat trick if I get invited back again. And not only that, but at Swansea City, we've actually had a really good year this year with set pieces. So I don't want to give too much away, especially with the season looking like it's about to start again soon. So what I've done is I've gone into League Two and I've tried to come up with a little sort of case study using dummy data, but just to give you an understanding of what you can really quickly create. So this is successful corners per game, and the two teams that we're looking at really is Northampton and Port Vale. Now, Northampton in the playoffs by 1 point above Port Vale. Now, if you look at this, Northampton are 5th for successful corners per game, Port Vale are 3rd bottom. If we then go to a scatter plot, we can look at success percentage by the number of corners per game. So not only in Northampton winning more corners per game than Port Vale, but the success of them is a lot higher as well. And then finally, we can go to this sort of distribution map again, a heat map of where they deliver the corners to. So all corners here have been adjusted to being taken from the same side, as you can see by the corner flag. And these are all delivered corners as well. So we're not counting any short corners. And I think here you can sort of see that Northampton seem to have a bit more of a plan with regards to their delivery. You know, they tend to put it between the 6-yard box and the penalty spot, but then they also have the option of that near post corner as well. Whereas Port Vale seems to be a little bit more sporadic. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that obviously if you're the analyst, say, of Port Vale and you're outside the playoffs by 1 point, well, perhaps set piece is an area that you can look at using the data and using Tableau really quickly to identify these things. So there I've just put down, is it the quality of the taker? Are they sort of doing specific routines at Northampton? You know, the plays in the box, have they got more plays in the box? You know, what runs are they making? By using, going into more detail with the data and also by using video clips as well, you can start to understand this a bit more, and perhaps that might be the difference between obviously getting promoted or not. Now, I know League Two is obviously with what's happened has sadly ended, but yeah, this might have been an interesting piece for Port Vale to look at. Okay, so the pre-match puzzle really, hopefully I've answered sort of the questions that the analyst asked me when I asked them last week. What do they do on a weekly basis? So how will they line up and who will they play? We've gone through the formations dashboard, playing style, how do they build? So that's going back to sort of Burton Albion, looking at how they pass the ball. How do they create? Who are their threats and passing relationships? So we looked at the relationship between Liverpool's fullbacks. Where do they shoot from? Where do they score? And are they in good form? So that then is looking at the sort of Brentford chance analysis we looked at and the differences between Ben Rama and Mbeumo. And then also finally, who takes their set pieces, who's a danger man, and where can we exploit? So I did sort of skim over that pretty quickly. Hopefully maybe we can go over that in more detail at some point. And if anyone ever wants to sort of give me a shout out and speak about that, I'm more than happy to do that. So finally, really, we'll finish with this. So Tableau allows you to work smarter, basically. We can get a lot of the basics done in Tableau, automated, save you a number of hours a week. And by doing that, you can spend more time affecting behaviours. So I'm not going to keep you any longer. You know, it's a nice day outside. Yeah, hope the analysts watching this, sort of those questions and sort of pieces of work I've gone through are relevant, and you've probably all experienced a lot of those things in your day-to-day job. And that is how Tableau can help us out. So yeah, any questions, fire them far away. And yeah, if you want to get in touch, there's my email. You can ask the guys, and I don't mind giving my number out, and I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. I can say we've had a lot of questions. I've seen the chat box and the Q&A box popping up. And just to go a bit further on that, As we've mentioned from the first user group, which we weren't able to record, Tom has re-recorded his session. So we're going to be sharing that as well. So after this, we'll have 2 recordings coming out, this session that Tom's just done, and then also the next session of what was previously done. But on terms of that then, let's take a look at what's popped up in the chat. So the first one popped up it should have been in the Q&A, but it's in the chat, but I think I can ask it. So the first one, is this team's formation done manually? So just around the formational analysis and how they actually get that structured.
No, is a short answer. No, it's automatically done. So there's a bit of back-end work that needs to be done. So essentially, whatever data provider you use, so we use Opta, you have to go through all of their available formations. And then in each of those formations, you need to essentially create XY coordinates to plot those on a pitch map. Once you've done that, though, essentially when you get the data feed from Opta that tells you that a player has played, let's say, a team, has played, let's say, a 4-4-2, the database can pull in 4-4-2, and it knows that if your position is right back and your formation is 4-4-2, your XY coordinate to plot your node on that pitch would be, X equals 30, Y equals 20, let's say. So there's a bit of manual work to set it up, but once it's set up, it's literally choose the season, choose the league, choose the game, and it will pop up straight away for you with the player name and number.
So that seems like that answered that one. In terms of the next one, we had one from Fabian, and it seems like more of a question about how getting into the industry and working for a club. So he asked really if it's possible to do internships with sides, or if it's rare. And I imagine that'll be more of a performance analysis sort of internship. I've seen a few available in terms of clubs advertising, but it'd be good to get your perspective, someone who's obviously gone through that journey.
Yeah, so I mean, I personally didn't do an internship. There are lots of internships available out there. I think if you follow sort of the relevant accounts on social media, a lot of them get posted. I know a lot of teams now work with universities and do master's degrees where you do your master's alongside working with a professional club. The video analyst, obviously Rob Carroll is really good for that. And I think Jumping Sport sort of websites and accounts like that are good to find. Any opportunities are out there. Alternatively, you can always get yourself on LinkedIn and potentially message analysts directly. Obviously, if you be friendly and, they may well be friendly back and provide you with some help and some support. But yeah, the opportunities are definitely there.
Yeah, I've seen a lot online, so just keep your eyes out. And yeah, we've got some people as well. The University Point's really good. I know we've got Jamie from the University of Worcester, for example, who regularly attends these and hosts his own webinars. So really just to keep your ear to the ground and look. In terms of the next question, then we've got one around that Liverpool data set which was used around the passer and the receiver. So just asking which data set you've actually got that from.
Yeah, it's just the stats perform Opta data set. It's just the event data.
Is that in terms of when you work with it, is that the exact format it comes in, or you have to be doing anything else to change it?
So there's a bit of back end work that he's doing. So our data architect Dan Morris at Swansea is really good with that sort of stuff. So essentially, to get the pass receiver from the data set, you have to take the player on the row underneath the row where the passer is, if that makes sense. If you can imagine, there's a row that says player A and his event was a pass. If you then look at the next row, which is the next thing that happened in the match, there'll be a player associated to that row. That player is obviously the receiver of the pass.
Yeah, okay. Got another question here as well from Sancho. And this question was around the pattern of passes in the matches again, around how does it become actionable insight to improve performance? And that question is, is it delivered pre/post match to the coaches, and how does that information actually relate into a physical game or training session?
Yeah, so I sort of answered the question in the question, really. So if there is a relationship there, if there's something that does stand out, obviously it may well be that we spot something watching video and we can then double check it in the data rather than sort of going through the data trying to find something, unless something really stands out in that passing matrix that there's a high relationship between two players. We'll then put the two together and we'll essentially just share it with the coach and say, this is something that we need to be aware of. And it's as simple as that, really. All of our coaches have access to Tableau online, so they can actually go in and they can use that passing grid and pass map themselves as well, whether it be on the Mac or on the iPad.
got another one here from Julian as well. I think it's the last one. So again, if anyone does have any more questions, feel free to put them in. But do you consider score situation, e.g. the state of the game, in your analysis? So things like shooting habits, passing styles, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, this talk was very much a back to basics. I wanted to show how sort of all analysts could quickly build, a worksheet or a dashboard to provide some insight. But in terms of the level of detail within the data and the number of filters that you can put on a worksheet and dashboard is really unlimited. So you can quite easily have a parameter or a filter on there that says game state, winning, losing, drawing, and the data will change relevant to that. So yeah, that's all doable as well. Great.
And it looks like that's us out of questions. Oh, maybe we've got another one here. There you go. This one is actually kind of answered in your previous one, but if you want to give a 30-second overview of it, just in case people haven't seen it yet, it was, you mentioned a data architect at Swansea. What's the structure of your data team there?
Yeah, Dan does the back end, I do the front end.
And just to add the caveat of that, on the one that we will publish, Tom goes into a bit more detail about the team and the structure of that. So there'll be another one for that, and we'll try and share it out to the user group as a link, but also I'll be posting on LinkedIn, and we'll have all of us, me, Eva, James, Tom, everyone sharing it. So just feel free to connect with us and you'll be able to find some more detail out about the full-on structure.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think we're out of questions. And it would be a good time then just to thank Tom and also to thank Ravi for everything they've done. And I'll pass over to Eva now to wrap up.
Yes, thank you, Oscar. And I do want to remind people that we've got this little survey for them, because we'd love to hear what they thought of the session today, how many they've attended previously. So James has put together a survey. James, did you want to share your screen briefly?
Just popped it into the chat. So it's quite a long link, so I wouldn't expect anyone to have to type it in.
Excellent. Okay, so people can check out that chat. It will also come in the follow-up email, but if you're super eager, and we'd love that, fill in that survey, let us know what you thought and what you'd like to hear more of. And also, would you like to speak? Do you have something that you want and can present? That would be great. Yeah, and with that, I think we're going to wrap up the third Tableau user group. From me, also thanks to Tom and Ravi. I think it was really cool to see the mix of, Ravi building a few things on the fly and looking at, some of the, I don't want to call it popular media, but the stuff out there on Twitter and what people are talking about, but also what kind of, how does it reflect in some of those conversations, and then Tom sharing some of the things that he's built, how he's improved things using Tableau and simplified them and automated them to some extent. So I really like that balance there. And with that, we're going to wrap up. You will hear from us through the typical social media channels of Twitter and LinkedIn about the next session. So we're going to set a date very shortly on that, and then we'll get you all to register again, and hopefully we can all come back together, and eventually we'll hopefully all meet in person as well. For now, we're going to just stay virtual. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your hopefully sunny day, your Thursday, and we look forward to connecting with all of you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.